Okay. Border Collie. Okay. Alright, can you hear me now? Where's the YouTube link? Seems to work, I think. Alright. Okay, let's get started. I think there probably won't be too many people, and let me announce the link. Copy. Okay, announce here on the my cache. Paste. And then maybe Zcash. All right, so let's go through the changelog. So that's the purpose of this chat, is to go through the changelog. And if you have any questions about what has changed, please let me know. So the big, first of all, the version number one here, 1.2.17, is not going to be exactly the version we're going to release. We're going to release 1.3, just to indicate that there's a major change between well, the previous version and this one. Then the major change is obviously the NU5 Orchard. So most of the stuff here is going to be about Zcash, but there are some things that affect also YCash users. NU5 is Zcash only, and that's primary related to Orchard. So NU5 is not only Orchard, but Orchard is a big part of NU5. The stuff that was in NU5 that we already released before and that you already have is the fact that we can make transactions with the new format, transaction format 5, and that was released with 1.2.16, so a few months back. Now the bigger stuff is Orchard, which is a new pool of shielded nodes, and for Orchard, YWallet was adapted to well, WAPSync was adapted to use Orchard. So now with YWallet, when you synchronize, you will synchronize both the sapling and the Orchard nodes. Obviously, that's for a Zcash account. YCash account only has sapling nodes, so it will not be affected by Orchard. The drawback of that is obviously that we have to synchronize two things now. We have to synchronize and trial decrypt both sapling and Orchard. And due to the ongoing spam that Zcash has, that essentially makes the synchronization about 2 times slower. So if you see a difference of synchronization time in Zcash, that is mainly because of that. The Orchard nodes are also spammed. The next point here, well, it's slower than before, but it's still actually much faster than other wallets. So for Orchard, not too many options are out there. In terms of light wallets, you only have a YWallet, Zingo, and now YWallet. So I'll let you try them out. So there are not too many options, but I think I can confidently say that YWallet is going to be significantly faster than the other ones. Okay, the next point here is that we have a history. So whenever you have a previous version of YWallet, you would have accounts on sapling. So your address would begin with a Z. It's obviously you know what it is, right? And when you install, when you will upgrade to 1.3, your accounts will be migrated. So you don't have to normally, you don't have to wipe out your data and restore from seed. You just install the new version, and then you notice that your address is going to start with a U instead of starting with a Z, and that's because it has been upgraded to UA. This doesn't change anything that your account has. So if it had a balance, you would have the same balance and you would have the same sapling nodes as before. The only thing is that now, because you have also Orchard receiver, your primary address will be a UA. So your primary address will actually have 3 receivers. It would have a transparent, sapling, and Orchard receivers. So pretty much aligned with what Zcash had in mind for unified addresses, and that's also what Zingo does. What YWallet does, though, is a bit different, because they separate transparent, sapling, and Orchard, and you will have actually 3 addresses. And the UA that you have for Orchard is a UA that only has the Orchard receiver. So the philosophy for YWallet is different. You in YWallet you only have transparent and shielded, and when you have when you tap on the QR code, you will switch between transparent and shielded, and when you're on shielded, it combines both sapling and Orchard receivers, or sapling and Orchard nodes. So that's the point I will remake later, but that's a philosophy that is fairly important to keep in mind. If though the upgrade doesn't work, before you do upgrade though, so one major point is that you need to make sure that you have your seed phrase. Things can go wrong. Try very hard to make the upgrade process seamless, but things can go wrong. I don't have access to all the devices and all the hardware out there. So it's possible that you may not be able to, the application will not work. In which case, all you have to do is erase the data and then restore from seed. Right, so before you do any upgrade, in general, make sure that you have your seed phrase, and the seed phrase is per account. So if you have several accounts in your wallet, make sure that you back up all of the seed phrases. Then regarding Orchard, now that you have sapling and Orchard nodes, you obviously want to make transactions that involve them. So the next point here, sapling and Orchard transaction builder, is it sounds trivial because, well, what can you do without a transaction builder? But actually, I put it there because it was significant work, since Libras Zcash actually does not have Orchard transaction builder at this point. They're still working on this. I think it's part of the DAX-Sync upgrade. So we have our own, and that means that you can make a transaction that pays UA, transparent addresses, and sapling addresses. So where you send the money doesn't matter. The transaction builder will be working the same way. The next point is, I think, worth mentioning, because I think it's clearly something that other wallets don't do, at least not yet, is the fact that there's when you make a transaction to one or several recipients, and especially if you pay a UA, the UA can have multiple internal receivers. So UA is a bit strange compared to the regular addresses. Addresses for other kinds of addresses, whether it's Zcash or other cryptocurrencies, there's actually one point, one location. So it's kind of like having a phone number, if you want. You have an account, you have a phone number, but somebody calls you on that phone number, and that's associated with you. But with UA, it's actually a combination of several communication points. So to me, I like to see it as a business card. So in the old days, when you give your business card to somebody, you would have a phone number, you would have an email address, you may have a fax, you may have a personal phone number, because you would like to make sure that whoever wants to contact you has several ways, all the different ways to contact you if one of them goes wrong. So maybe you don't check your email all the time, maybe your phone is out of service. You want to make sure that that person has a way to get in touch. So a UA is that. UA is different ways to send you funds, and it's up to the sender to decide which way he should use or he can use. So the idea is that if you have a sender that only supports transparent addresses, but UA. So UA does not necessarily mean that your wallet can do shielded transactions. You can make a wallet, for example, you could upgrade Ledger without introducing a shielded sending, just by giving it the ability to decode UA. In which case, the source wallet, Ledger in this case, will be able to pay UA, as long as this UA has a transparent component, transparent receiver. So that flexibility comes with the responsibility that the wallet has to make the transaction that is the most private. So some wallets don't care. As long as transaction goes through, they are very happy about that. But that's not how we roll with the YWallet. We want to make sure that your transaction has as much information as it can. So, for example, if you are paying a UA that has Orchard receiver, and you only have sapling in your own wallet, it's not the best privacy you could reach, because going from a sapling to Orchard reveals the amount. It doesn't reveal the addresses. So the eavesdropper would not be able to know where the money comes from or where the money goes to, but he would be able to know that a certain amount was transacted, because whatever goes out of the pool or into a pool is public information, is recorded in clear in the blockchain. Let me check if the chat is. So far so good. Let me know if it's. Okay. Okay, so that's cool. So what we do with YWallet is that we didn't establish any rules in particular when it comes to deciding how to compose, how to build a transaction. We're not saying, okay, you have Orchard, you have yes, Orchard, then we need to use Orchard, or you have sapling, but the wallet support Orchard, so therefore we have to go from sapling to Orchard. The idea in YWallet is that there are tons of parameters. It's very open when we make a transaction, because you could have nodes in a transparent pool, in sapling and Orchard pool, and you could be paying one receiver or several receivers. Some of the receivers could say that they only accept transparent, but many other receivers also say that they only accept sapling. And other receivers can say, okay, well, I'm flexible, here's my UA, that takes transparent sapling and orchard, which is the default for YWallet and Zingo, which means that you can pay me any way you want. So here you have a situation where there are several pools of nodes that you can have and several different destinations that you can target. So instead of going and establishing rules and hard coding rules in the wallet, saying, okay, for transparent, I will do T to T, or for Z sapling, I will do Z to Z. We implemented a search algorithm, basically. And that search algorithm maximizes your privacy. So I'm not going to go more in details about that, but the idea here of this component here, this privacy-oriented transaction optimizer, is that there are no hard-coded rules. And what it does is it would find the transaction that it has the highest privacy it can, right? And it goes well with the next point, which is the minimum privacy blocker. The minimum privacy blocker is simply saying that, okay, the best I could do, the best YWallet could do for this condition, knowing what nodes you have and what receivers you want to pay, is unfortunately only medium private transaction. Are you going to be okay with that? Right. So if you set it as no, I want only high level transactions, so that's the setting that you can save in the setting page. Then at the moment a transaction is made, the wallet would block you. You can always override. You can always overriding means that when you press the button send, you have to hold the button instead of just tapping on it. But by default, you can't accidentally make a transaction that is below your threshold. Right. So the next point is actually the page I just talked about. Is that prior to sending the transaction out? Oh no, it's not that page. Sorry, that page will be mentioned later. The pool transfer page is an entirely new feature, which extends the concept of shielding and deshielding nodes. So before we had like a button where you could say, let me shield my transparent balance, and that was pretty much it. You would press that button, it would make a transaction that basically sends the entire transparent balance to your shielded pool. And also we had a mechanism called auto shielding, where when you make a transaction, regardless of the amount that you actually send, it will send the entire remaining balance of the transparent pool into the shielded pool. So for example, you had 100 ZEC in a transparent pool, and you would pay somebody 1 ZEC, so T to T. But actually what would happen is that 99 ZEC will go for a T to Z. So the transaction is a hybrid transaction that has inputs transparent, but one output transparent, and also a shielded output for the change. So this auto shielding is actually quite popular because it was first introduced by YWallet. Unfortunately, for me, at least for me, I didn't really like it too much because I had many users surprised by this behavior. Right? They would come to YWallet because there was some issue with their transparent wallet. So we have to keep in mind that most of the wallets out there are not shielded. Most of the people out there are still using like either exchange wallets or using Guardia or these Ledger. These guys are not shielded yet. So they kind of came to YWallet out of necessity because their funds were not accessible anymore, and mainly because of the transaction format change in U5. So they don't really have expectations of what shielded wallet should do. And the first thing happened to them is they get the seed phrase, and then they restore their transparent balance in YWallet, and they make a transaction to an exchange or to somebody else, but then the entire balance is suddenly disappears. right? It disappeared from their transparent address, and it went to the shielded address. The problem with that is that now, once it went to the shielded address, they have to synchronize. Transparent address, you don't really have to synchronize because the remote server is taking care of node management, like any normal transparent blockchain would do. So when you import in YWallet a seed phrase and you only have transparent balance, the import is it could be made instantaneous if you just skip the rescan. Then you will see the balance, but then you make a transaction and suddenly you have zero balance, which is pretty scary, I have to say. We always said that, okay, don't worry about it, you just have to synchronize. But when a synchronization takes hours, it's not a very positive experience. So in this version now, I took away the auto shielding, and I replaced by a more explicit action. You have to go through the pool transfer page, where you will see the a bar, a nice. Let me see if I have that. Should have a picture of that. Where's the pool balance? Yeah, something like, yeah, this is a pool balance. So you have a bar here that shows the composition of your account with sections that are proportional to whatever balance you have in transparent, sapling, and orchard. So here I can see that actually I probably have zero balance in transparent and zero balance in orchard. With this page, then you can move entirety or fraction of your funds from one pool to another. And since it's internal to a given address, to given account, you don't have to input the an address. You don't have to specify the receiver. This is going to be built for you. So now I'm just going to say here that I want to transfer from sapling to orchard. And when you do that, it will update your max spendable based on whatever you have in the pool. You can specify the amount in ZEC or in fiat, or you can press max to send everything. The other thing you can do here also is, well, you can add a memo. But the more important thing here is this little option here, the max amount per node, which allows you to pre-split your nodes. So the idea of pre-splitting your nodes is basically preparing your change so that later on, if you want to make a bunch of transactions, you don't have to wait for confirmations. So this option here was in the send page before, but I think it makes more sense here to have it in the pool transfer page, because this is a page that you would use to practically prepare or manage your nodes pool by pool. So that page is entirely new, and it helps you manage your pool composition. So next one is the fact that all of this works consistently with the core wallet. So what I do personally is that I keep funds like more than a few ZECs on the core wallet, and the core wallet is simply another phone that I keep offline, and I installed Lineage OS on it. So that is supposedly fairly secure. And every time I do a transaction that involves an account on the core storage, I do it through this feature, which allows me to prepare the transaction normally on the normal YWallet, but then keep the secret key on the offline device, and all the communication is done through QR codes and camera. So this has been upgraded so that you can do that with Orchard receivers as well, and so the principle is the same. So that the only idea here is that we are consistent in functionality, with the version of YWallet that had only sapling. So we could do Core Wallet, then we still can do Core Wallet now with Orchard and UA. We could also do multi payments, so we can still do multi payments with UA, and basically everything should work the same way. Right. So moving on, let's talk about UA. So UA, as I said earlier, is not entirely related to Orchard. So UA can have no Orchard receiver, but most of the time you expect UA to have Orchard. Right? So our implementation is a multi-receiver, and in the page, in the settings, let me see if this is there. Well, probably not there, but you will find it easily. In the settings, you have a tab where you choose your address type. So you can check which receiver you want in your main address, the address that's shown on the account page. By default, you would have all the receivers. So your address would have transparent, sapling, and orchard. So all of them. But if you go and you for example want to simulate the sapling address that we had before, which was a Z address, really all you have to do is go to the settings and untick T and O. So you just leave the sapling. So if you leave the sapling, then your main address would become a Z address, and it would kind of look like the way before, except that your balance will also still include the Orchard receivers, Orchard nodes. So if you want to receive money from somebody who doesn't have the upgraded wallet, and they can only send sapling legacy sapling address, then you can do that. Another way to do that, which is more flexible, maybe we'll actually launch the macOS version. I don't have to do that. Can do it from here. All right, so what I was going to say is that another way to receive money is to use the payment URI generator. So you click on the button with the QR code, so this guy here, and then you have that page. So by default you just have an address, right? That's actually the string here is the QR code, is what is in the QR code. That's because at this point I don't have any amount requested and I don't have any memo. So if I change here and I put amount, then you see that now it became payment URI. You have Zcash and then the address, the amount here, and then the memo. It's an empty memo, but I can do that hello, for example. And now we have a memo. You also can notice that we make an improvement to the previous version. You don't have to click on anything. As long as you type something here, it will be reflected automatically. So the QR code that we have here, if you want to have a sapling receiver, you can uncheck T and O, right? S and O, I still have to have a UA because we have two receivers. But if I remove O as well, we are back to sapling. So this is the old-fashioned payment URI with the Z address. And if I want to save this guy, I can click on the QR code. Now you can copy that to the clipboard, or you can save that as a PNG. Right? So you can save your payment URI. In general, it's one of the improvements. The QR codes can be saved and copied. All right. So that is what changed with the main addresses. So we have this UR receiver selection. This was mentioned before, basically that when you have the balance here, this balance is both orchard and sapling. So you can see that by if you go to the nodes that are orchard will have a different color than the nodes that are sapling. So you can Well, they're all orchard at this point. So this means that if I go to the pool transfer, I should have 0 in sapling and everything is in orchard. So let's do the reverse. Let's go from orchard to sapling, and I want to send 10% of my balance. So orchard to sapling, this sounds about right. I press transfer, and because this transaction is, well, by definition is going to send money from one pool to another, you can see that the privacy is only medium. And the reason it's medium here is also detailed in the fact that we have a sapling change of 6 millisec that goes into sapling. I wanted to send money from orchard to sapling, so sapling pool gains 6 millisec, and the orchard pool loses 6 millisec, and also the change, the fee. Sorry. So this privacy level is too low. I must have set it as higher here in my settings. So if I go to settings, I can see that what's my, yeah, I set it to high. So only high privacy transactions would be allowed. But so I can either lower the settings, or I can override. So let me override. That's easier. Fortunately, I have to redo this stuff. So orchard to sapling, and I wanted to send 10%. Press transfer. Same thing here. So I need to press and hold the send button. And now the transaction has been sent. Right, the payment is in progress. So we wait a bit. Okay, it's done. Okay, transaction has been made, but it's still well, it's still pending. It's not mine yet. So we wait a bit and we'll come back later. All right. The next point is unified viewing key. Well, we had sapling viewing keys. If you import an account using your sapling viewing key, you would have a watch-only account. So an account where you can see the balance and you can see the history and the notes, but you are not able to make transactions. Well, not directly. You can make a transaction if you have a co-signer. So same idea here. If you go to the backup, well, I'm not going to show my backup because my seed will be revealed. But in the backup, you would have instead of having the viewing key, sapling viewing key, you have now the unified viewing key, which has both sapling and orchard. So using that viewing key, you can create a watch-only account that has sapling and orchard. Right. So I think that at this point, this is the only wallet that handles that. Yeah. Okay. Oh, unified diversified addresses. This is actually quite cool, quite useful. Cool, that's not very important. But here you see that address here is your main address. If you press this button, you would have more. You would have a unified address that it has the same receivers. So that means what? That means that if I go here and I say I just want to say orchard receiver. So now it's orchard address. To say OK. So this is going to be just your orchard receiver, and you can create, or you cannot create. Oh yeah, you can create diversified addresses. So diversified addresses are essentially addresses that are different, they're unlinkable to the main address. So every time you press a button, you will get an address that is different than the one before. There's no way for an observer to know that these addresses are different, are paying different people, paying the same person, but all your funds will go to the same account. So they will all appear here. And the most my transaction was made. Now you can see that I have a sapling node, and I have this is a sapling node, and this was the orchard change. So if you give different sampling different diversified addresses to different people, they will not know that it's the same account, right? And the most important thing is that you don't pay any synchronization costs by doing that. If you go and you create a new account, if you can, right, you can go here and you say I want a new sub account, then you will essentially create a new address as well, but this address will have a different seed. Well, you have the same seed but a different index, right? And the problem with that is that when you synchronize, the wallet has to synchronize, try to decrypt both addresses because they are completely unrelated. They are unrelated at the secret key level, right? And that can quickly become problematic. I heard somebody had like 1,000 of these because they essentially didn't know that if you press a button, create new address in either in YWallet Lite or YWallet full node or Zcash D, if you create a new address, if you're not explicitly asking for a diversified address, which are only supported in Zcash D, by the way, you would get an address that has a different secret key. And if you have 1,000 addresses, that means the synchronization time is 1,000 times higher. So at this time, I think like YWallet take maybe 1 day. That's a 1 day to synchronize. Then synchronizing your account would take like 3 years. Right? So it has a massive impact on performance. And unfortunately, I don't think that the UI was made clear enough. I mean, probably it was not a big issue before the spam. But right now the difference is drastic. Right, so I don't know of too many scenarios. I just know a few scenarios where unified addresses would not be a better substitute for sub accounts than better substitute for sub accounts. So basically, what I'm trying to say here is that unless you consider using these guys, right, these unified diversified addresses, and I think that in most cases they would fit the purpose. All right, so that was more like a public service announcement than a feature. One thing to remember though is that these addresses here, the diversified addresses, do not have a transparent component. And the reason is that we cannot diversify a transparent address. So if we were adding the transparent component inside the address, then it would be trivial for two people who receive your diversified address to realize that they are coming from the same person. They just can decode the transparent component and notice that they are the same. So we don't do that. We don't add the transparent component. Therefore, the shielded address components, which are sapling and orchard, will be all different on all these diversified addresses. Okay, we saw the payment URI feature. So that's the guy here. Is there anything else I need to say about that? Not really. No, nothing new. But think about, okay, and then we have contacts, and contacts have UA, right? So we can store a UA with a contact. So that's just saying that the UA are supported across the board. Now, one thing I forgot to add here, but that's also introduced with 1.3, is that when you make a payment, when you go to the send page, you have these templates now. So a template is basically you're saving whatever you have done here, right? So let's say I want to pay this guy, and I want to pay, I want to add my address and say that it's a donation, and I want to save that so that I can redo the same amount would be nice. So let's say I want to pay €1 or €0.5. Okay, and I want to save that as a template because I want to remake that same transaction later, another time. So I press the plus button. Oh, it needs an address. Okay, so this version here has an issue with copy paste. Okay, so I save this and then I say it's donation €1. Okay. Then if I don't do it, or if I do it, but let's not do it at the moment. So I reset the page, I leave, I do other stuff, and I come back another day. You can select the template here and reload it, and then the stuff will be restored for you. Right. So there's management here where you reload, you save, you delete these templates, and the advantage of this template versus the payment URI, that's why I just remember that, is that this template you can save in euros, in the fiat. So let's say now, for example, that I prefer to have I prefer to use USD as a currency. Right, so everything now is shown in USD. If I reload the template, okay, there's a bug or something. I'll save it in USD. Okay, maybe this is not working. Okay, I think it's working, but the amount was translated to USD, so it was in euros, but it became USD. Need to check though. Oh, I save it in euro. Well, anyway. Okay, so that's this feature. You can save your payment templates. Okay, next point, batch backup. The batch backup is for people who has several accounts. So I have, for testing and whatnot, I actually have a bunch of ZEC accounts, Zcash accounts, and a bunch of YCash accounts. And I save all the seeds independently, but it's a bit tedious whenever I upgrade the version, or I do a try or something, to restore them all by one. Plus, when you use just the seed doesn't contain any synchronization data, obviously. So if you restore from seed, you have to remember when the wallet was created, and you have to rescan from that date. So even if that date is fairly recent, even if it's like a month ago, the spam is so high now that it would still take at least an hour to synchronize everything. And if you have several accounts, you know that this is going to take as many times longer as you have accounts. So we have 4 accounts here. It pretty much means that it's going to take 4 times longer than if I had 1 account. So the alternative to that is to make a full backup. And the full backup saves all the accounts. It basically saves the database. It makes a copy of the database, so it contains all your nodes, all your synchronization data, all your seeds, everything is backed up, except your application settings. Application settings are across coins, so they are not backed up. But that's fairly minor. It's like your current color scheme, your threshold for privacy, these kind of things are not going to be backed up. But primary stuff that you want is your account data, your account seeds, and your synchronization data. So to do a full backup, you go here and you say, I want to do a save batch, and it's going to ask you for your encryption key. So your encryption key is independent from your seed or from the keys that you have for your accounts, for your Zcash and YCash accounts. What you have here is your own encryption key for this full backup. So you can generate a new one, or you can use the one that you already have. If you want to generate a new one, you can click on generate, and it gives you a new key pair. you have to save both of these components. You have to save the encryption key and the decryption key. The decryption key, we're only gonna show it once. It's gonna only be here. If you don't save that, then it's gone forever. But if you forget, then and you haven't made a backup yet, well, you can always generate a new one. These keys, by the way, are exactly the same format as a standard tool called Edge encryption. So that's actually a standard format, and there are several implementations. So there's an implementation. This one is the implementation in Go, but you have implementation in like other OSs, and you have packages for a lot of platforms. You don't really need to use the standalone Edge, but the point here that I'm making is that if one day YWallet doesn't work anymore, you still have a way to decrypt your data by using one of these tools. This is a standard component. Then once you have you have set the encryption key, you just do save backup. It will prepare a backup for you and then ask you to save it somewhere. Right. So that's all it takes for a backup. And to restore, you do the opposite, but this time you have to enter your secret key. So you enter your secret key here, you do load the backup, and everything is restored. So again, it saves you. It can save you a lot of time because the backups are portable. They are portable across any version of YWallet, starting from this version, of course. So that means that if you synchronize on a PC because you have more compute power, better bandwidth, etc., on the PC, you can take the backup and then restore it on another PC or on the phone, or on the Mac, whatever. Right? So they're all the same. It's all portable. And if you take it and you restore on the phone, you obviously the blockchain would have advanced, right? So let's say I do the backup today, and then and restore in a week, right? So there will be 1 week of data that your backup doesn't have, but it doesn't really matter because the wallet would just restore from the backup instantly to the point as of today, and then catch up the remaining week. Right? So it's still way better than having to synchronize from who knows when. So that's I mean, for me that was a very useful feature to have, especially during development. So that's this part here. Right? As a summary, let's say that it's strongly encrypted using state-of-the-art public key and secret key encryption. So the key is actually very large. It saves everything. It saves Zcash and Ycash in one go. It also saves your synchronization data, your prices, history, and everything. You can use it between devices, so phone to phone and phone to desktop. That's fine. Moving on, it would be compatible between versions. So if you upgrade to 1.3 or 1.4 later, then you can still use the backup for 1.3, right? And finally, there are tools that allows you to decrypt this stuff and extract the data and recover your seed in case YWallet doesn't work anymore. All right, so that's batch backups. Yeah, this is going to save you a massive amount of time. I personally can't live without it anymore. I haven't really resynchronized from scratch unless I'm testing some feature. From the UI, we have seen this this pre-flight thing, right? So the pre-flight page just before you send it. So this page here. It's going to be shown whenever you make a transaction, before you make a transaction, whether it's a port transfer, whether you send it to somebody, whether you do a minty payment, whether you try to shield something, whether you try to save contacts, right? Everything that actually makes a payment changes the amount that you have in your wallet. we're going to prompt you with this, right, so that you have a chance to cancel it. And so because even if we don't want to make operations that affect your wallet without you knowing it. And sometimes it's not very obvious that you're making one, because for example, if you do a contact and you create a new contact, we have the option to save that address book to the blockchain. But essentially, when you do that, you're making a transaction, right? And maybe you don't want to make that transaction because at that time it would reveal something that you may not have enough nodes or something. So that transaction report, the pre-flight transaction report, always gives you a chance to understand the privacy of your transaction before you send it. And also with the minimum setting, the privacy setting, it will also block if you want to have some kind of firewall, if you prefer, you want to call it. So the privacy levels, we have 4 of them. The high one is when nothing is revealed except the fee. The fee is always revealed. So that means that you're doing a Z to Z or O to O, sapling to sapling, or orchard to orchard. If you do a transaction that forces us to move money between sapling and orchard, then it would be medium privacy, right? So because you're revealing that amount. You may not be revealing the entire amount of the transaction, but you're revealing some amount, because it means that the transaction optimizer was not able to put everything through Z to Z or O to O. Maybe it put a portion of the transaction amount through Z to Z, but it had to do at least a fraction through Z to O. So it's revealing something, and that lowers the privacy to medium. Then below that is whenever you involve transparent addresses. If you're paying somebody on the transparent address, it would be low privacy. So we make a difference between paying somebody on the T address and using T address. Using T address is even lower. It's because now you're revealing your own transparent address. If you're revealing the transparent address of the receiver, well, sometimes there's no choice, because the person you want to pay has only given you a T address. So in that case, we would say, well, transparent is the transaction is low privacy, but at least we were able to hide where the money comes from by using our shielded nodes, right? So if we do a Z to T or O to T, it would be low privacy. But if we are even run out of nodes or shielded nodes, and we are forced to do a T to T, then it would be very low privacy. You will be able to see that, and then hopefully cancel and prepare some nodes to do a better transaction. So okay, we have that. In the UI now we have more stuff. I showed you the ability to save the QR code, but we have the same for importing. So if you go here and you want to import on mobile, you can use a camera, but unfortunately on desktop the camera is not accessible at this point. So instead what we have is ability to open a dialog box and load an image from file, and then the barcode will be scanned from the image. There's some upgrades to the entire UI framework, because we moved to Flutter 3.7, which means that now the UI is Material UI 3. So you can see some probably some subtle changes in the design. Right? The buttons are a bit more square here. If I go to this, there are lines. I think if I resize this, also it will be different. The fonts are a bit different. That's because now we are Material UI 3. And the setting page has been redesigned so that the settings that you have that you see here, they are for the account that you have selected. So I'm on I'm on a Zcash account, so I have these settings for Zcash. Right? So these are settings for Zcash. So I would have things that like what is my main address type. But if I go to if I select YCash account, then it would be not, it would be different. Select this one, and then right now you have a section of the YCash server, and the stuff about Orchard is gone. Right? So that's that. And finally, many changes regarding the distribution. So before we had two versions for macOS. We had Intel, and then we have Apple the versions. The problem is that they are not really compatible. If you have an M1 chip and you use the Intel DMG, then you would have to enable Rosetta, and not only is it slower, but it would not work if you don't. And if you have Intel chip and you download the Mac version, the M1 version, I think it just doesn't work. So that was a bit confusing. And now we have a universal DMG. So the DMG is bigger, but you don't have to care about what OS you have. Just download it and install it. I think the size on disk will be the same though. It's smart enough to install the proper version. About that. And the next point is regarding Android build. The Android build used to rely on Google Play and Google services. So this doesn't mean it's not super critically important, because most people have a phone that has Google services. But if you wanted to install it on this kind of devices, on Lineage OS, or on a custom ROM that doesn't have Google services, or you are from, for example, from China that doesn't have access to Google servers, it wouldn't work. Right? It could work if you install GApps equivalent. So there's some GApps APK that you could have, right? Open GApps. But the situation was far from being ideal. Now, I remove all the dependencies on these guys. So this version of YWallet will run on these OSs, well, Graphene OS and Lineage OS. F-Droid is more like a store, but this store requires your application to be 100% open source. So we are now 100% open source, and yeah, that means that you use it on more secure devices. I personally use that because I want to have dedicated offline signer, and want to make sure that Google is not spying on me. Okay, next one is app image. So that's for the Linux build. We still have Flatpak and FlatHub. So Flatpak and FlatHub are, well, Flatpak is a package, universal package format, and FlatHub is a store for these guys. So if you go to FlatHub, you will see us somewhere. Yeah, we're here. So that means you can install YWallet on Linux from that store. But I heard some people have issues with the fact that FlatHub or Flatpaks applications are sandboxed. And well, one way is pretty cool because it increases your security. But the drawback is that if you are doing a remote connection to a Linux machine, you may run into issues because the sandbox will prevent you from exporting the display. So in this case, you can use the app image. The app image will be larger because it actually embeds pretty much all the binaries. No, not all the binaries, but most of the binaries. But it may be helpful if you have issues with Flatpak. The remaining two are more like about deployment. So the point here is that if you go to GitHub and you look at YWallet. You will see that the releases are done by AutoBuilder, right? So we have automated releases for Android, Linux, Mac OS, and Windows. So the only thing we're releasing manually still is the iOS version, because the iOS version there's no builder for it. And for the Android version, it's even better because the GitHub is also publishing the binary to Google Play, so you can make sure that this is actually the exact version. The source code matches the version that you have on Android. All right, so that's all we have. Okay, one last thing to do is actually publish this stuff. So after this video, I will publish all the versions, the mobile version. They went through approval from Microsoft, Google, and Apple, so it's all ready. And I just need to click and say that we're off to go. All right, before that, any questions? Okay, a lot of questions, but I can't see this stuff. All right, so that's good feedback. All right, so if you don't have any questions, then let's finish here, and I will just publish the apps on the store. Okay, thanks. All right, so okay, thanks for attending. And yeah, if you have questions later, of course, you can ask. Oh, there's a Discord. Let's see the Discord. Discord is here actually. You can go to FAQ, and you have a link to the Discord. Right. So YWallet.app, then FAQ, and you have a link to the Discord. So this is a preferred way to get help. You just post it there. Another way is to open an issue on the GitHub. I like this guy. Actually, this guy is closed now. Let me see. Close. And the form. But in order, I read the Discord and the GitHub. So if you want to have help quickly, the best way is to go to the Discord. All right. Okay, so I would say thanks for listening. It's been longer than I thought, 1 hour. Yeah, thank you for your continuous support. I hope you like the version, and I hope that you will help us increase the adoption of Zcash and YCash by using UA and using all these new features. So bye bye for now. Cheers. Where do I stop?